Hey everybody, it's Scott Bischoff coming to you for the Detroit Lions podcast. Couple things. We're a week late on this. I meant to do this last week at the same time I was doing the Week 13 preview, but things went sideways here. Our dog ate a Coke can. Yeah, ruminate on that for a minute. Coke can. So things just went a little haywire. Anyway, so two things. We're going to do the question answering segment, and we're going to sprinkle that in with a little bit of where are the Lions, sort of generalized stuff, and a little bit of draft talk for this one. Remember, we are still doing Chris is still doing the St. Jude Christmas for the Kids. It's important. It's at stjude.org/DLP. Donate if you can. That would be great and wonderful for us all to do what we can for the kids. Okay, stay tuned. Coming at you right now. Like I said, I meant to do this a week ago, and I apologize for not doing this right away, but things really did go bad for the dog. And other things too. It wasn't a great week. It just wasn't. And things have finally slowed to the point where I can do this. So anyway, yeah, she ate a Coke can. I can't believe it. Anyway. She's a bull mastiff. She's a year and a half old. She's a chewer, and she's very sweet. She's an awesome dog, but chewing a Coke can and swallowing the metal and all that stuff was just not great. But she's fine. So, okay. So, again, I haven't prepped much of this, so this is just going to be kind of off the cuff stuff. So here we go. First question that was posted last week when I mentioned that I was recording Thursday for Week 13. A question. I'm not gonna say who they're from because I'm gonna butcher that unless I should. I don't have an answer. Maybe I'll think about that for a few seconds. I guess I'll butcher it because otherwise it's sort of nonsense. All right, so from at GJ Granger 187, hi. Future plans to fix the right guard position. They keep but restructure Vitae. Use a high-value draft pick. No. Tommy Kramer, that replacement. I don't know. When does he return this season? I don't know. I don't know why you asked me. Just kidding. So future plans. You bring up reasonable things. Vitae is very overpaid to play guard. I think when Bob Quinn signed him, it felt like it was compensation that a player between a guard and tackle would get paid. And that's the way I just viewed it, was like the Lions really don't know whether he's going to play guard or tackle. So they're paying him sort of a little more than what a guard would make in the hopes that maybe he plays tackle. But we just, it'll kind of work itself out in the wash during camp, which is just, it's incredible to think about. That's how that signing was made. It's just amazing. Now, he's been a good guard. He's a fine guard. But I think we know that replacement, if you look at the WAR baseball, the wins above replacement, the baseball model for positional importance, I don't know that guard is all that important a position in relation to some of the other positions on the field. One, I would not use a high draft pick on a guard. I just wouldn't. I don't think there's any reason to do it. You see what Jonah Jackson gives you. There are interior offensive linemen in the draft that you can find in rounds 3 and 4 and later, and they're fine players. You don't have to use a premium pick on a guard. I don't know, honestly. I don't know what the story is with Tommy Kramer is. I just don't. So I don't have an answer. I don't think he's a replacement player over what Vaitai gives them. And I don't know when he'll be back. I know I'm not helpful. Future plans. Evan Brown is an interesting player. I think he's a better backup center than he is as a backup guard. So, if you are moving away from Vaitai, where does Logan Stenberg fit in that mix? I don't know that there's a great answer for that yet, but he did look better this year than he has at any point in his career. Has he taken steps? Possibly. Can you find a replacement level player in free agency and pay him less money than you're going to pay Vaitai? Maybe. It's a good question. There's not a great answer for it right now. I feel like I probably should close this down and end it now because this isn't off to a great start. But we're going to push through. Whatever. Okay. Maybe we'll get back to that answer in the draft segment of this. Okay, so from Justin Falds at 1PR1DR. One Pride, I'm assuming. I think that's what that's supposed to be. What do you expect to see from Jameson Williams when he's on the field? Not just his production, but the changes to defenses and our offense as a result. It's a great question. These are all great questions. I think everybody views Jameson Williams as a vertical target and a deep threat. But I think one of the best ways to view or the most reasonable way to view what the Lions will do with Williams is a little bit of what the Miami Dolphins did with Jalen Waddle early, like last year. Lots of crossing routes and lots of drags and lots of short passes to get the ball into his hands with the hopes that he could just outrun defenses. So, I know that when they drafted Jameson Williams, I didn't necessarily think that they were drafting Jameson Williams for Jared Goff, but you still have to make it work. And while I wouldn't want Goff to be hanging in the pocket forever, waiting for Williams to open up vertically, I do think it's reasonable to think get him isolated and running crossing routes and like drag routes, and just beating the corner to the sideline and turning the ball up the field. You saw that at Alabama. He's so fast, and it's a weird speed because it's in his stride. So you'll see players take bad angles with him, and if he's running across the field, field's 53 plus yards wide. If he's running across the field and he can beat a defender to the sideline and turn it up, that's super dangerous. So that's kind of what I think. I mean, I'm sure there'll be vertical shots. They'll take their shots with him, but I think as far as his production, you'll see a lot of short passes looking for yards after the catch. Now, as far as what it does to a defense and the offense, I think you're looking at a player who is Brad Holmes mentioned this in the pre-draft process. They were looking for an offensive player who would dictate the terms of coverage and pretty much dictate to the defense how they had to play them. Brad Holmes, while he hides what he's really saying, I shouldn't say it that way. He tells you exactly what he thinks. He just hides it a touch in how he says it. So, when he says we're looking for a player who can dictate to the terms of the defense how they're going to play us, we should have all known, okay, he's looking for a super fast player. And there was one really fast player in the draft last year. It was Jameson Williams. So back to the question, changes to the defense and the offense as a result. I think you're going to see Jameson Williams command safety over the top help, which opens up some portions of the field, the middle of the field. Maybe if you do get him running, drags and crossing routes where the safety has to get involved there too, you can run plays behind that. But I definitely see a scenario where defense is going to have to give 2 players to Williams, both as a corner and a safety kind of rolled up over the top. It just, anytime you have to cover one player with 2 guys, it just opens up other areas of the field for somebody else. That's kind of what I think for where Jameson Williams is. I do think it's going to take a little while for him to get there, but I think we'll see some splashes of that speed very quick. JJ Vandenberg at VandenJ18. Is this the least penalized Lions team in years? It seems they've been able to play aggressive and still avoid the costly penalties previous teams would commit. It certainly feels like that. I haven't gone through and looked at how much they've been penalized, but I haven't felt watching the game that I wanted to fire the remote through the TV at, some nonsensical play where they've jumped off sides or they've had penalties and stuff, but it hasn't felt egregious like in years past. I kind of expect them to have a bad penalty Sunday because we asked this question. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so on to the next one. Jeffy Pooh or Mr. Pooh to you. If you had to trade a player on the active roster for a 4th round pick this offseason, who would it be and why? A player on the worst player on the active roster is the player I would want to trade. I don't know who that is. The most meaningless player on their roster. On the active roster. That's an interesting question. It feels like a bit of a setup. Maybe it's not. I don't know. I don't know who it would be. Would you trade a backup? Would you trade a backup offensive lineman that's never going to play? Dan Skipper. Okay, we traded Dan Skipper for a 4th round pick because I don't know that he's all that valuable moving into the future. No offense, and I could be wrong there. Tim Campbell at VN Sint Life. I've seen us mocked to not take a quarterback in the 1st round. Either I'm dumb for really wanting to take one, or the Lions are dumb if they don't take one. What do you, A, personally want the Lions to do, and B, do you think the Lions will do with their firsts? Okay, Tim, we're going to argue about this for the next 4 or 5 months, so stay tuned. I don't know what I want them to do. I do know what I want. I want them to fix the quarterback position. I don't know how to do that. I also want them to take Jalen Carter while fixing the quarterback position, but I also don't want them to pass up Will Anderson either. But I want them to address the quarterback position. Can't do all those things. So we'll talk about this for the next, until draft day. It's a great question, but it's a little early in the process. I do think that they need to address the quarterback position and get that resolved. And in a perfect world, you'd still have some time with Jared Goff to where he can play and you can sit somebody and they can kind of figure it out. I think in some ways drafting a player who you I should save this for the draft portion, but we'll just do it. I think drafting a quarterback and just throwing him to the Wolves early is generally a bad idea. But I will also tell you that the Lions' situation as a team is not your average team drafting at the top of the draft situation as a team. They have a really good they have a really good offensive line. They have a good running attack. They have lots of weapons for a quarterback, but mainly they have a really good offensive line, so it's going to keep a quarterback somewhat comfortable. So I think the transition for any quarterback coming to Detroit will be a little softer than if you throw a quarterback back behind the Houston offensive line, or say Carolina's offensive line, something like that. So it doesn't necessarily scare me as much taking a quarterback, but like I mentioned, Jalen Carter is a monster, and I think he would take his singular addition to the Lions' defensive line would that defensive line would be spectacular. You'd have Jalen Carter playing, somewhere between 3 and 5 tech. You have Aleem McNeil playing one or nose, kind of stuff like that. You have Hockenson. You have Pascal playing on the inside at times. Good luck running on that unit. I think that'd be a very hard defensive line to run on. And then you throw in a little bit of pass rushing help that you're going to get. If you look at the concept of Jalen Carter eating up double teams, or Aleem McNeil eating up double teams and freeing up Carter, and then freeing up both the outside pass rushers, there's so much that I think Carter would do to make everybody along the defensive line more productive. But then there's a part of me that looks at Will Anderson and thinks he's the best pass rusher to enter the draft in several years, and how can you pass on that? I don't know what they're going to do with their 2 first-round picks. It's way too soon, and even I don't know that I'll know what they're going to do even draft night. So I think Michigan Born Sports answered they might be forced to take one. The question would be where. I would say that Anderson or Carter are better or on par with Young. All these quarterbacks scare me, though, as it seems like they're going to be projects. Goff most likely the starter next year. Yeah, I mean, it's possible that he's the starter next year. Tim responds, the problem is that I don't know what scares me more, a rookie or Goff. That's a great point. It doesn't feel like a great year to have to draft quarterback super early. I think Bryce Young could be a franchise quarterback, but he's tiny, and that's going to be some of the issues with him. This is something we'll argue about for a while. I don't know that I like what I see all the time from C.J. Stroud. When things go bad, it seems like his body language is awful. If you remember Jay Cutler in Denver and Chicago, when he seemed like he always kind of wanted to sit alone on the bench, and he did not seem like a kind of guy like, his team responded to. He just didn't. It just didn't seem like he cared. And there are moments if you look at Stroud on the sidelines in the Northwestern game this year, and there are moments in the Michigan game where he just looks. He looks defeated and like. I don't know. I worry about that with him. I think that the offensive line would be fine for him. He's going to have, if he goes to a place where the offensive line is not great, he's going to have a very rough transition to the NFL. Let's see. We're almost done with these. Okay, we have somebody. This is a Chicago draft trade scenario. I shouldn't even give this any whatever. So the Lions give pick 3 and 13, both their first round picks, and a second rounder, and a sixth rounder, and 2024 first, third, and fourth round picks to Chicago to eventually move up one spot to pick second, and they get a fourth rounder in the mix. Somebody's really high. I'm sorry if I know this person, and I don't mean to be offensive. I wish I was as high as you coming up with that trade scenario. I really do, because there's ice cream in the freezer and I could crush it. Okay, moving on. So I figured we would sort of generalize about where the Lions are through. What is this, week 14? So the Lions have played 12 games. I believe they're 5-7. I think what is obvious at this point is that the trajectory and if you're looking at just a where they're going sort of mentality, it's obvious to anybody looking that the Lions are headed in a good direction. Now, does it stay? Do they continue to build upon what they've done this year? That's tough. I would say that there's 5 games left, and at 5-7, let's say you win 3 of those 5 games and you finish 8-9, and you look at your 8-9 record and you think we were 3-13-1 last year, and now you're at 8 wins. Yeah, there's some game management stuff and clock management stuff, and there's some decision making that's confusing at times, but we have to embrace that for what it is. It's obvious these guys love playing for Dan Campbell, and I think if you look at the past 5 weeks since the Miami game after Aubrey Pleasant was dismissed, the Lions defense is a totally different unit. They just are. They're a different team. And I think that's reflected in the stats. So I think they're in a good place, and trending in a good place too, because they're playing a lot of young players. So now if we look at their position groups, just looking at just kind of like, what are their draft needs? And this is so early, and it can change. It can change after one play on Sunday. Injuries, things happen, right? So, no matter how you look at it, whether you're a Goff supporter or not, 2 things on that conversation. Goff has played really well this year, and he is not at all the reason why the Lions are losing games. At all. He's not. But secondarily to that, you don't have anybody behind him. You're not developing anybody behind him. So, 1, you absolutely need to draft a young quarterback, and develop young quarterback. Now, I don't know when you do that, but it's something that you have to do. And then you have to answer the question whether or not you think Goff is the player who, in the end, can get you over the top and win you games simply because he's so good that he overcomes whatever limitations there might be on the roster in really important games. And that's where I think some of us will disagree with others. I do not think Goff is that guy, but I also recognize that he is absolutely not the reason why they have lost games this year. He's just not. The throw against Buffalo on 3rd and 1 is a throw that he has to make. We can argue and debate back and forth whether Chark ran the wrong route or whatever it is, but Goff kind of freaked under the pressure that was coming, and any of us would have. But so that's the quarterback. You need to find either a young quarterback to develop, or you need to draft one early and replace Goff with early drafted quarterback. And it's a conversation to be had over the next several months. There's a lot to be talked about there, and none of that's in stone. It is very easy to see that the Lions are a different offense when DeAndre Swift is healthy and feeling good. It's also easy to see when he is not. When he is not feeling good, he doesn't look explosive. He doesn't play physical. I'm not saying, God, that sounds terrible. I don't mean it to sound that it's not a knock on his character. It's just there's just not as much life in his legs, and there are times when he'll just go out of bounds and he'll bounce. He'll cut up and work against the design of a play at times. When he's feeling good and just going, he looks great, and the offense is much more explosive. So a decision needs to be made about what to do with Swift. Swift continues to be a bit of a conundrum because he's not healthy enough, enough of the season to warrant a big either a big contract or a big or a lot of faith in what he is as a player and what he's going to continue to give you. So I could see them needing an explosive pass catching weapon And an upgrade, in the long term, running back, the shelf life for running backs is short. So you kind of need an upgrade there. I think you're okay at receiver. Tight end, the Lions have moved on from TJ Hockenson, who was a first round pick 4 or 5 years ago. It's obvious that it hasn't hurt them. I want to say they're either 3-1 since that trade, something like that. They won a bunch of games. Their offense doesn't look limited. They didn't really use him enough to warrant paying him what he thinks he's worth. So I understand why they did what they did. Interestingly, they play him this week. It'll be interesting to see what that looks like. But you still do. I mean, you need help at the position. Now, James Mitchell looks okay, and he's a rookie, and it takes time for rookies to emerge at that position. I mean, we've seen that historically. It's a very tough transition from college to pro for a tight end. So, again, that's a position of where you could say you might want to take a look. Now, I'm not talking about early. So, no. There's a tight end for Georgia. His name is Darnell Washington. I would love for the Lions to use a pick on him, but I think he's going to go early. He's like an extra tackle, except he's athletic and he's a good pass catcher. He's like a little more athletic Brandon Pettigrew. You don't want to address that position with a premium pick. I think you look pretty good on your offensive line. Drafting a guard or two. A guard, I would say drafting a guard in, say, round 3 or 4 might not be a horrible idea. We'll see what the draft looks like. And that's kind of where we are on offense. On defense, you absolutely need a penetrating 3-tech type, like a Jalen Carter. Somebody who can free up McNeil, or somebody who can be freed up by McNeil to create some interior pass rush. And both those two together command enough bodies that your pass rushers get into much more one-on-one situations where they can be much more productive. Don't know what the scenario is for Romeo Okwara's return from the Achilles, and I don't know what the long-term viability is for Charles Harris is either. So, being that Pascal is more of a inside-out, a versatile guy, a guy who can play as a 5, but also can play D end, and he's a really good football player. And you have Hutchinson. You do have a need for a pass rusher, an upgrade, pass rusher. You could say that almost every team in the NFL could use an upgrade out of their pass rush. Derek Barnes looks a little better over the last little bit, and Malcolm Rodriguez looks fine as a rookie. Linebacker is a bit of you don't need to be drafting linebackers early in today's game. You just don't. It's not a premium position. So that's kind of where that is. And then you look at you look at corner. Jeff Okudah looks like he's fine. He looks really good. And then Jerry Jacobs returning has been a huge deal for them. There's something he does as their number 2 outside corner that just sort of makes it tick. You have Okudah returning from a major injury, and you have Jacobs returning from a major injury. So I wouldn't say that. While I wouldn't say that cornerback is a huge need, I would say that slot corner is a need, and some depth behind both Okudah and Jacobs would be a great thing. And then at safeties, you have Tracy Walker out with the Achilles. Kirby Joseph looks good. He looks like he's going to be a player in the NFL. And then there are the pieces you have that we just don't know. I mean, we still don't really know what Will Harris is. Safety stuff. So, you could say safety, a playmaking safety is a bit of a need too. But I think we've just kind of laid out where they are, and with some free agent money and the draft, having some premium picks, how you can see that this as good as it looks right now, and I know they're still, I know they're 5-7, but as good as it looks right now, there's hope that after this draft, you could be really setting your five in the top, say 75, whatever picks. If you hit a few of those and you get some, let's dream for a moment and say you stumble into Jalen Carter with the Rams pick, and he really finishes off your defensive line, and all of a sudden you're bringing lots of pressure and you're tough to run on. That's one way to make it easier for your secondary to play is to make the quarterback throw the ball quicker, is to put the quarterback into bad down and distance and force him to sit back there into the pressure. So that's kind of like just a generalized, this is the state of the franchise through 12 games. Obviously, it's going to change. There's a lot that's going to change between now and the end of the season, and then between the end of the season and the draft. And Lions fans should be excited because the team is in a situation where they're winning games and they're doing things like the Thanksgiving Day game. I watched it at home with my family, and it was like, this is nuts. Watching them go toe to toe with the Bills and really be in a situation where they could have won that game. Very impressive stuff. Now, it's a snapshot in time. They had moments earlier in the season where I know people were screaming about Dan Campbell and his job and all these things, and they had to move away from Aubrey Pleasant. But, here we are through 12 games, and they look like a team that is a confident team. They look like a team that other teams need to respect. We saw Jacksonville come in here and maybe not show them as much respect as they needed to, and they got kind of whooped. That was a step that the Lions needed to take. They needed to show to other teams that, if you come in here thinking we're just a walkover, you got another thing coming. We're gonna lay the wood, and they did. The rest of the schedule looks interesting. They have Minnesota, they have Green Bay, they have Chicago, they have the Jets, and they have another NFL team that they have to play. Maybe Carolina. I could be making that up. I don't think I'm making it up, but anything is possible these days. I could see them getting to 9-8. I could, which would be great. It's an incredible turnaround from a 3-13-1 season. So all that to say that they have holes to fill, both in free agency and the draft. They don't have gaping huge holes. Obviously, yeah, they do. I shouldn't have said that. They need Jalen Carter. They need a player like Jalen Carter. They need a player like Will Anderson. If you draft Will Anderson early, and you find yourself a penetrating interior defensive tackle and say with that second pick or even in round 2, okay, that's a good way to do it too. But those are two huge positions for them, where you could say that's transformative for their entire defense and for their defensive line. So that's kind of just a state of where they are. Some questions. If you guys like the whole question thing, I know I'm a week late, but I did not make it up. The dog really did eat a Coke can. Yeah. Anyway, so that's it. Let me know what you guys think of this. If it stinks and you don't want me to do one of these again, I won't. But if you like it and we can maybe move away from some of the questions, if you don't want to do it that way, we can do more draft related stuff. Obviously, we're going to do a bunch more draft related stuff, but we're at a point in time where college regular season is over and we can start talking about position groupings and that kind of stuff. So, let Chris or I know what you think, how you want to approach this, and we'll just kind of keep on doing these together. You guys have a great week, have a great holiday season, all that stuff. We'll talk to you later. Bye.